of companies, particularly SMEs, and we'll look a bit at the regulatory side, policy side, the whys and the hows as well. And the goal is that as I go through the slides, you try to think, how can I use this to then effectively evaluate my climate impact and start improving it, put together a plan for it. So when you get questions as we go through the topics, just speak up, because I'm going to have the slides in front of me, so I might not see a hand that is up. So let's keep it informal, and everyone can just speak up when needed. Okay, I will try to share the slides and then we can get going. Okay, do you see my slides now?
Yes.
Okay. Are they in full screen mode?
No.
No. Let me see. Trying to put them. Let me try again. Apologies. Can you see my slides now? Because I can't see anything, and it should be sharing at the moment. I'll try once more. Okay, I'll try to share my whole screen. Perhaps then you will see my slides as well. Okay, now it should be fine, right? You see the full screen slides.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go like that. Okay. Let's get into it directly. So we'll start from more generic info, and there might be some things that you already know about. So let's just make sure that we're all on the same page, and then we go more into detail, into more concrete and operational things. So why should climate change matter at all for SMEs? So I think there's as many answers to it as there are different companies. But the main categories of how it touches SMEs already today and not even in a future perspective is five aspects. I would say first, customers. This is probably something that touches way more the B2B companies. And it's not even so much about the first question is not going to be what is your climate impact. It's more like a basic hygiene question of have you calculated it? Is it transparent? Can you provide it easily for your customers? It is definitely more so for B2B, but also for B2G, if you do sell to the state entities. And the private customers depends on your segments, really. You probably have a better feeling about that, how important it is, but it does evolve in time, and it's increasingly important for your individual customers as well. Again, when we look at the Baltic markets, it's the price is still such an important factor, and perhaps it's not the first question for customers whether you're sustainable, whether you're transparent about sustainability. But on the Nordic markets, on some of the markets where companies have been more active in sustainability for a longer time, in Central and Western Europe, the customers are more aware. They have more tools and apps to check this on. So they do actually make their decisions based on that. Now, when it comes to governments and regulators, not to look only as government as a buyer, but also as a policymaker and a regulator, there's definitely strong push for SMEs to also first of all, understand their own climate impact, and more broadly, environmental impact and social and governance impact as well. So all the ESG stuff that we hear so much about, and whether it's dead or not now. The whole approach, and we can come back to it more in detail, the whole approach in EU at least has been that we don't want to put direct regulations and compulsory reporting to SMEs. However, it's also an easy way out, so to say, for governments, because it means that they put the regulation on all the financing parties, banks, investors, big corporates, who are going to ask the same things from the SMEs they work with anyways. So for you, the government might not directly oblige to any reporting on ESG and climate in that, but they make sure that your partners are going to ask that. And why it is that when a bank calculates their climate impact, the loan that they give to you is going to be part of their own impact. We're going to see later how it's calculated, but it's going to be in their scope 3 of climate impact, so indirect emissions. And we have
sorry, I have a question regarding this one. Will this section 3 will be implemented to only for the purpose for which the loan is, or for the whole company? For example, bank finances us, for example, to buy new equipment which is CO2 friendly, but I don't know, other equipment is not so friendly. So basically, regarding the bank, which will be the amount they have to put in? Yeah.
it really depends on the like the financial tool that you're using. If it's a loan for a specific project, then it's going to be project based. If it's working capital financing ongoing basis, then it's for the whole company. So yeah, it really depends. And
Okay.
Yeah. But what is true as well, just to, not to make it look like too scary, is that, banks have a high level of detail that they need to calculate this in, a lot of methodology, very strict. But especially with the simplification that's been through now in this whole reporting thing, on the EU level, at least, it is not so detailed for SMEs, so you have more liberty. But yeah, so coming to the third point, investors definitely ask for it as well. It's not only the banks, and for investors, I think it's interesting to know that there's impact investors now. Impact investors are in EU, they're regulated under the SFDR. It's a Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, and under that, they have two types of impact funds. So those are Article 8. It's like a mild impact fund, so to say. They will look at not having negative impact. And they will be a bit more flexible in it. So sustainability is not their core objective, but they look to have positive impact. When it comes to the Article 9 impact funds, then they have the obligation, in order to be considered as one, they have the obligation to show how much exactly positive impact they have, and that all of their investments have this positive impact. This kind of funds in the Baltics, we have a few. They're mostly VC funds. So for a regular SME, perhaps you don't even have contact with them, but startups definitely do. And they still do have quite good financing. So as a startup, it's worth considering whether you can be considered a net positive climate impact bringer, so to say. And we'll look into how to see that. And then the fourth category is business strategy and growth. That's of course looking more at your operations, and to really see the climate impact calculation and improvement of climate impact as also your potential business driver. When you're calculating your climate impact, and you figure out that energy creates most of your climate greenhouse gas emissions, then when looking at reducing these emissions, you can definitely find ways also to reduce your costs, but perhaps you can even find a new idea for a new product line, or some new business activities there, or partnerships. So don't look at climate impact as a thing that is separated from your business, so to say. And then there's the public image and media relations. At the end, we will touch a bit upon how to communicate on your impact. And we even have some regulations now already that define how and what should be communicated. Where do those climate policies and commitments come from? You have definitely all heard about the Paris Agreement that was agreed in 2015. So that's a global, United Nations level agreement that both Baltic states separately, but also the European Union for all of the member states has signed. So here the goal is to keep the average temperature change under well below 2 degrees. And we're always comparing to the pre-industrial revolution levels. And here it's a thing to note is that we're pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. We have already surpassed the 1.5 on a global level. Luckily for us, it's calculated as a 10-year mean. So we don't know whether the 10 years are still going to be 1 plus 1.5 and plus, or whether we manage to bring it down again. But we're very close to failing this 1.5 already. And all projections show today that we're on a course to plus 3.4 or something like that by 2100. That would mean a complete collapse of our environmental system. And we'll see later how it translates into business risks and real problems for companies. Now, how this was translated into EU policies is through the climate law. It was negotiated around 2019, but it finally took effect in 2021. What was agreed is that in order to implement the Paris Agreement that we agreed to, we are going to reach climate net zero by 2050. Net zero, why we talk about net calculation, is that when we look at the anthropological emissions, so human-made emissions, they come from different sectors, but then there's also two sectors or two activities that can absorb those emissions. First of all, it's of course the forestry and land that absorbs CO2. So that's like a carbon sink, right? So it absorbs into it, which is not in the atmosphere then. So that gives us some negative emissions. And also now we have technologies to catch the CO2 that humans emit and to put it either store it technically underground or make use of it in products where it's going to stay captured. So this is where we get the, so to say, negative emissions. And so we're going to look at the net effect of those. So the emissions emitted by human activities minus the carbon sinks. Beyond that, in climate law, what we put down is that by 2030, all over EU, so that's our common goal, that's not specific to countries, we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 55% compared to 1990 levels. That is a very ambitious goal. I know that in Baltic countries, we should be all, I think, already beyond that. We have reduced more, but that's mainly due to the fact that we had very high emissions coming out of the Soviet era, and then very quickly they dropped. But as we always compare to 1990, it seems like we've done a lot. Actually, it's just that our Soviet economy collapsed in the meantime, right? And we have built a new economy. Now, how in EU this 2030 goal, how do we implement it? There's 3 main tools, and depending on your activity, you're going to be in one of those 3 pools, basically. So we have the emission trading system, where we have the huge emission producers, energy companies, heat producers, energy in this intensive industries. Here you can see on the left, there's some examples of it. We all have those companies in the Baltics. There's, I think it's around 200 companies that are under it, and they need to directly pay for their emissions on the carbon market, which is a compulsory one, so they have to participate in there. And this is the kind of pan-EU system that reduces their emissions. If you're not in this bracket, then the other bracket, and I hop to the right to the third one, land use change, and forestry, you should check whether you're in this category. So it's really anything land based. Here we have the agriculture that is, related to the land and not raising animals. We have forestry and anything relating to that, any wood-based products. So here the approach is completely different. We have taken a pan-EU goal. So pan-EU goal is minus 310 tons of CO2 equivalent by 2030. And we have divided this goal between all the 27 member states. And so each member state has its own part to do in this goal. And then it's up to the member state to decide how they're going to reach this goal. But what it means in reality for companies is that the member state is going to push with different regulations and policies the sector to absorb more CO2 or to emit less. This is why we're having huge discussions about forestry policy, how much we can, we can cut the forests and how much we need to absorb. Then the third category is really, it's everything that is not in the first and the third, basically, the middle one, the effort sharing regulation one. We have transportation, agriculture that is not relating to the land use. Then we have waste management, small industrial processes that do make emissions, but not enough to be considered in the emission trading system. And small scale energy production as well. So here it's the same, like the land use change, and forestry. We have a pan-EU goal, minus 40% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. This is compared to 2005 levels. And here, every country again has its own goals. And now, given that we're from Baltic countries, all of us here, just so that you see that really when it comes to the effort sharing regulation, this is the column in the middle here. You see that we have very different emissions. It's a very complicated kind of calculation how they come to the goal. It's not really important, but those are the goals, and this is gonna also mean that in Estonia we have a lot more to do in those sectors under the effort sharing regulation, meaning that the policies are going to be more stringent. So if you do fall under it, or you're very dependent on this, for example, transportation, where we need to reduce a lot of emissions in all of the three countries, you can bet that it makes sense for a company to make sure that you do invest into low emission transportation, because this is something that's going to be made more and more expensive if you pollute a lot by using transportation. And the same goes for LULUCF. So that's the land use change, and forestry part. So here, if you source from wood industry or land use agriculture, there's going to be support measures coming from governments for sure. to make sure that the land absorbs more CO2. But it also means that activities like very aggressive forestry, where we raise whole big patches of forest, that's probably going to be more and more complicated in time. So it makes sense to kind of think about your activities and the risks related to those activities, because the policies will follow those goals. Okay. Did you get any questions about this? Otherwise, I will go a bit more into detail about the company-specific policies regulations. Okay. I will move on, and then you can ask whenever you feel like. So we talked already about the emission trading system. So that's the carbon markets, as it's commonly named. There used to be one. Now there's a second one that's starting. The second one, the first one, as we said, it's for large emitters. I don't think any of you is producing energy or is a huge industrial emitter. But what might influence you more is the ETS2. So under this, we put buildings, transportation, and fuels. So the companies that bring fuels to the market need to start paying for the emissions like the big industrial emitters now. That's effective from 2027. That means that they're going to basically the price they pay for their emissions, they're going to carry it on to customers. That means a real price increase for you. We calculated it in Estonia for like a per liter basis. I think it was around 10 cents per liter. Perhaps the estimations have changed, but it will make a little bit of a difference if you have a lot of logistics involved in your business. And the buildings, I mean, that's mostly about heating, small scale heating in the Baltics. We do have this. If you do use it, then that can affect you as well. But otherwise, electricity production is mainly under the ETS1, so the system that already exists, so that shouldn't bring any change now. But this is something that should incentivize you price-wise, cost-wise, to reduce your energy emission, energy usage per unit produced, and shift to cleaner energy sources. There's another new kind of a carbon system that is going to be in place now. It's called the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. It is not a tax, but it looks a lot like a tariff. It looks like a lot like a tariff for carbon on EU borders. Basically, the idea is that given that we have the compulsory emission trading systems, the EU ETS 1 and 2, we don't want that, let's say, a Chinese producer would come here with a way cheaper produce on our market, but that has way more emissions behind it or in it, so to say. So we say, if in your country, for those product categories, the carbon tax is lower than in EU, then you have to pay the difference at the EU border. That will influence the prices. Again, they will just carry on the emission price basically to you, right? And if you buy from those product categories, then probably the prices are going to increase soon in next year. So here, first of all, they put steel, aluminium, cement, and fertilizers. So again, it makes sense to look a bit where you source those things and whether it will make sense to source from cleaner and maybe EU markets, right? And look at what kind of a cost impact it might have for you. then coming back to the reporting side, the concrete rules for big companies come mainly from the CSRD and ESRS regulations. But again, as I said, although they're not compulsory for you, the big companies will ask for you to have the figures that they need. There is a voluntary SME reporting standard that is being made at the moment. It's called the ESRSL, complicated name, but it should be introduced in 2026, and then we're going to have a common methodology on what in what detail and how all the calculations should be made by SMEs. So hopefully we will have that next year. And then what is kind of giving input to all of this reporting is the Sustainable Finance and Green Claims regulation as well. In the EU sustainable taxonomy, we define what is environmentally sustainable for investors and founders. So the claims you make on this, they need to comply with what is defined there. And what it means for you is that financial institutions are going to prefer the green taxonomy aligned projects, right? So this is going to affect also the financing conditions and the availability of financing for you. And the green claims regulation, as I said, the taxonomy says what is environmentally sustainable, how it's to be proven. So the green claims regulation says how you have to prove the environmental claims that you make. So if you slap on your product a big label saying super green, then that's probably not going to fly in the EU markets anymore, right? No greenwashing. So they have kind of standardized the claims. Something that is very much talked about on the policy side, but I think companies don't use it much yet, but it's going to be needed, is the do no significant harm kind of compliance. It is also defined in the EU Green Taxonomy. It's one of the core principles there, and it is supposed to ensure that while you're pursuing one environmental goal, let's say I want to reduce my climate change impact, so less greenhouse gases, it gives you a methodology or a framework to look at it in a more holistic environmental way, is to say, while making good for climate, I'm not going to damage water, soil, animals in an important, significant way. And that's, I think it's a very, very good framework to go through your whole environmental impact. It is also going to be necessary for more and more of EU funding. For now, there's still some EU funds where it's not demanded. If you ask for financing from the government, from EU directly, it's not always asked, but it's going to be more and more. From 2028, there's going to be the new financial framework for the next 7 years. And there, it is more probable that it's going to be asked for every financing that comes from public EU sources. So makes sense to look at it. And here you can see there's 7 categories, six environmental categories to be looked at. And it really takes the approach of like, do you make significant harm to any of those? And if you have a non-significant harm, then how can you mitigate it? What are you doing to reduce your harm? And I already talked about why it matters. Then we have the national and regional initiatives. We have different different organizations in each of the three Baltics that kind of regulate and give policies and support measures inside of the climate and environmental sphere. I do believe that you must know those for your own country, but just so there's no Lithuanians here, right? We're only Latvians and Estonians, right? Is there any Lithuanian? No. Okay. Okay. Just to, because usually those measures, it's easier to look for your own country and you probably know those, but those measures are also available for companies from neighboring countries. So just a general overview in both countries, we do have a Ministry of Climate that is more on the regulatory side and the strategic side, and who is developing the support mechanisms as well. So they really direct what we give money to and how. And then we have the implementation bodies. In Estonia, the main ones where you can find climate-related support mechanisms when you want to invest into, energy efficiency or circular economy or something like that. Then it's the Environmental Investment Center, Keskkonnainvesteeringute Keskus in Estonian. And we have Enterprise Estonia, ACE. Both of them have regularly measures, and you should keep an eye out to make sure that you get a support if you want to invest into sustainability. On the Latvian side, I don't know the system so well, but same Ministry of Climate, more like a strategic view and designing the policies, and then the implementation should be on the Climate and Financial Instruments Administration. So they are kind of giving out the money, right? So do keep an eye out on those. And here's the Lithuanian side, but we're not going to talk about that. I mean, this system is similar, just their implementing body is called the Environmental Project Management Agency. So if you do want to look for Lithuanian support measures, then you can just check their site, I guess. And the cross-cutting focus from all of the three Baltics is definitely that they're promoting greenhouse gas measurement tools. There's definitely different ones available in each country. I'm going to show you later the Estonian one, and we're going to see how we can use this. Why is greenhouse gas accounting the foundation for climate action as well? Basically, it gives us this systemic measurement and reporting for you, so that we don't do things on a gut feeling, right? It is based today mostly and globally on the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and the ISO standard, the 14064. All of the EU policies and the national greenhouse gas measurement tools are also made based on those global standards, but the EU tools can be more detailed, specific to the EU use case as well. I'm not going to go into again why it is used by whom, but I think compliance part is definitely going to be a bit more further for you. So the credibility and funding side is more important for you, and And what I would put more focus on is really to make sure that once you have a picture in front of you of, okay, my greenhouse gas emissions come mainly from, let's say, from those 1 to 3 activities, then this is where you should focus. And you can use it as a driver for innovation. You can think about how you can improve your processes there, how you can change your sourcing, how you can invest into energy efficiency so that your costs would come down. So really use it as a business tool for you as well. And in Estonia, we use a lot this like kind of a staircase to innovation. You start as a beginner innovator, you start adopting some, like looking at where you are in innovation in the company, doing little actions one by one. Then you evolve to be a systemic innovator, and then you become the pioneer of innovation. You're developing innovations and perhaps selling innovations yourself, right? It's a bit similar approach that we should have in the sustainability pathway for a company. Let's start by getting a clear picture of where we stand, what our impact is. Start doing the little and the most kind of easiest actions, be it changing light bulbs or putting I don't know, getting our waste management in order, and then moving towards more systemic approach to sustainability and integrating it really into our business and making business value out of it. So this is like a longer road ahead. Any questions about that? If not, we're going to move towards the standards and frameworks. Again, a step towards more concrete. We started talking about the ISO standards and the main one in that. Why we talk about standards is, it gives credibility, right? I think first step is, of course, calculating climate impact for your own company and for your partners who might ask for it. But again, even the partners, they would probably prefer you to get the like a certification for your impact at some point. It does give credibility to it. So the key international standards that we use, as I said, greenhouse gas accounting standard is the 14064. That basically all of the national tools that we find are also compliant with. Then for ISO 14001, it's the environmental management systems standard. And this is more about governance and how to integrate sustainability into core management and operations. This is a step after the accounting part, I would say. And then EMAS, the EU Eco-Management and Audit Scheme that has existed as a voluntary standard in EU for a long time. This is a bit more complicated. It goes beyond even the 14001, so a step ahead. And then again, a voluntary sustainability certification. We have tons of those on the market. Perhaps the most kind of talked about, at least it seems to me, is the B Corp certification. And this is really a step where you in the process of applying for the certification, you become a sustainability pioneer, I would say. It means that sustainability is brought into your business strategy very, very integrally. I know that more and more Baltic companies are doing it, and there's consultants who help to do it. So if you're interested in taking a very ambitious sustainability track, this would be your way to go. Oops, I have twice. Okay. Then again, the CSRD, which is a compulsory regulation for the big companies, but will give you expectations. And the upcoming regulation, which I think we need to keep an eye out because it can come out already in the beginning of next year, is the voluntary SME reporting standard that will give you a template, which will be very good to use. Okay. I'm not making a stop here. I wanted to start before we go into how do you really calculate your own impact? How do you get started with this? I wanted to take a look at what are the greenhouse gases. I don't know if you might have an environmental or natural sciences background or not. So there are 7 categories of greenhouse gases. We always talk about CO2, carbon, carbon dioxide to be precise, actually. But those 7, they actually come from different places. They have different greenhouse effects related to it. They have different lifetimes. So CO2 has about 100 years lifetime in atmosphere. And it's different for all of those 7, actually. CH4, so that's methane, right? It mainly comes from natural gas, from also livestock. We're talking a lot about how cows produce methane, a lot of methane. So this we have way less of methane in the atmosphere than we have CO2, but methane has a way bigger warming effect. So the greenhouse effect of methane is way bigger. It's 7 times as much as CO2. So what I wanted to say is that when we talk about the greenhouse gas emissions of a company, we always bring everything down to CO2 equivalent. So we always calculate everything in CO2 equivalent. And as we're none of us, at least I'm not, and I think none of you perhaps are environmental engineers, we're not going to be calculating ourselves the life cycle assessment of all of the greenhouse gases. So what we do is that we will find the emission factors that are already brought back to the CO2 equivalent that takes into consideration all the 7 categories of greenhouse gases and says in CO2 equivalent, it's X kilos of CO2, right? So that's important, not to make our life more complicated than it is. Just to give you an idea of the emission factor as well. So it's always CO2 equivalent, but it really depends on what you're talking about. For example, if I talk about the emission factor of electricity bought from the grid in Latvia, then I'm going to have an amount of CO2 equivalent, let's say X tons of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. So this is going to be my emission factor. And to get from this emission factor my own emissions coming from electricity, then I just take how many kilowatt hours of electricity do I consume, and I multiply it with the emission factor. We're going to see an example of that as well. Yeah, and the emission factors, I think what's important to know as well before we get into the calculations, it's that it does vary by country. So it's not that, electricity in Estonia and Latvia has different emissions actually related to it. It's just that why it is that we produce electricity from different sources, and that's how we get the different emission factor. What you should also know is that you can buy electricity like the generic contract from the grid, or you can have some sort of a specific contract if you have bought certificates of origin for renewable energy, for example. And then you can count that all of the electricity you consume is renewable, hence zero emission, right? So you should think of where this where it comes from, right? When you think about milk, for example, I can tell you that the emission factor of a milk coming from a French cow or coming from a Latvian cow is not so different. So to simplify things, if we cannot find the different the Latvian cow's emission factor for milk, then we can use the French one, right? So here it's a bit about common sense and using the best available data that we can access. I think the most important in data is that we do know and write down the source of it, and that is that our customers, our partners that we provide our data to, they know where it comes from, they can check it and see whether they agree with your calculations. So it's a transparency side. The emission factors, the country-specific ones, there's several tools. I know that Latvia and Lithuania have the kind of emission factor databases and some tools for companies to calculate as well. I haven't found English ones, so yeah, the one I'm going to show is the Estonian one. It can definitely be used with Google Translate for non-Estonian speakers as well, and the minimum is that you get the emission factors from there. But if you know that there's a Latvian good tool, then feel free to use that, of course. Yeah. How to start measuring? So I think first step is to define the scope, the boundaries. Decide which operations, sites, what activities are measured, to make sure that we have this approach of from cradle to grave. So you're not only calculating the direct emissions, but also the indirect ones. The emissions are so all the emission sources, so to say, your activity site and so on, they're defined into three scopes in the greenhouse gas emission calculation. Scope 1 is direct emissions. Think of it as emissions coming straight from your industrial site, right? Scope 2 is indirect, but it is related anything related to energy. Any fuel you buy, any electricity you buy, any heat you buy. What are the emissions that are produced from it outside of your own company? So when you buy electricity, it's not producing any emissions at your production site, but it is producing emissions when it's being produced. So here you put those emissions. And the third one is the largest one. In many companies, it is also the biggest source of emissions. It is any value chain activity. So anything you buy in your source, what are the related emissions? If I buy barley, or if I buy packaging, or if I buy yeah, I don't know what else we can buy. Anything we buy in, and anything that goes out of our company as well. So from cradle to grave, meaning that I need to think up until the point where my product has been used by the customer, and it reaches its end of life. What's going to happen to it? Is it going to be incinerated? Is it going to be go into landfill? Is it going to be recycled? You know, what happens to it? The same for packaging, right? Yeah, the cradle to grave approach. And yeah, clarify, also define well the organizational boundaries. If you have several entities and so on, you know, define it well what you're working on in the beginning and which processes and so on, so that the structure you have in the beginning is going to be helpful and clear for you. The second is the data gathering. Usually that's the hardest part. What you use and produce. It means a lot of data, sometimes data that you're today not even collecting yet. Energy, fuels used, business travels, waste and materials. There's really a lot of data gathering to be done. Use as reliable data and accurate data as you can. If you have any like internal records or invoices or anything that you can have hard data from, that's really helpful. For example, for the commuting of your employees, how they come to work. If you don't have it in databases, usually you don't. You can do it as a yearly. You can do it as a yearly kind of a survey thing, or you can integrate it directly into your HR database and do it more systemically. Usually, I would say that start easy, especially in SMEs. You figure out a way that is doable, that you can access the data, and then over time, as you start to do this evaluation every year, you automatize, you make it more precise, you make it more convenient for people to collect this data, you build it into your existing data databases and processes, so it's not so much of a separate activity anymore. So the first evaluation is going to be the hardest in data collection side. And then we have the emission factor side. First, to find them from reliable sources, and then the calculations, right? About the reliable sources, there's different online databases that you can access that give you emission factors. I'm going to show you one later, the Estonian one. I'm going to show you also a French one that is very useful, that I have liked using. I think it's better to use European ones. Usually they have more comparable emission factors, but also it's easier to understand whether it's a reliable source. When you go into specifics of, I don't know, some sort of a chemical or, very specific stuff that goes into your production, for example, and you don't know the emissions, one way is, of course, to ask from your supplier, to ask whether perhaps they have ordered an LCA analysis, the life cycle assessment analysis for it, and perhaps they can provide it, and you can get it that way. The other way is to look for different research papers on the topic. Perhaps scientists have published something on it, but do document it well, where you take your emission factor. Yeah, and the geographical relevancy, we have talked about that. Up to date as well. That's a real question, because processes and emissions change. So if you look at the emission factor of Estonia in 1990 versus in 2020, very different electricity emission factor, for example. This just the production, it has changed a lot. And so in a very simplified way, this is what we said. You take your activity data per functional unit. So for example, kilowatt hours of electricity, and then you multiply it by the emission factor, and you get the total amount of emissions coming from electricity for your company. And then, as I said, it should be kind of it's not a document that you make to just put in the drawers and never think about it for a year again. So this analysis should give you the hotspots of where most of your emissions lie, in which activities, in which materials and sources. And then you can start to build your action plan for how to improve your sustainability and how to also then reduce costs and make new business out of those activities. It also gives you a good baseline. So as you go and you start doing it yearly, this greenhouse gas assessment, do think of the fact that it's better to, if possible, to keep your data comparable year to year, so that you can see the evolution. And this is something that your partners are going to be looking at as well, how you've evolved in time. We talked about the 3 scopes of greenhouse gases. I wanted to show it, and it's a very good kind of a table or a scheme to see it done. So in the little clouds, you can see the 7 groups of greenhouse gases. And then the division into scopes. So scope 1, as we said, direct greenhouse gases inside of your company facilities, company vehicles. It can be any heavy machinery that is being operated in your grounds, any diesel generator that you have running, stuff like that. Then we come to scope 2. So purchased electricity, steam, heating or cooling now as well, that you use that doesn't generate emissions, or you take the emissions that are not generated in scope 1 in your facilities, but the ones that are generated by the one who supplies this for you, right? Electricity producer, for example. And then the scope 3 is it's also indirect greenhouse gases. We divide it into 2. It's easier to look at it like that. You have the upstream, so everything that comes into your company, and the downstream, everything that goes out of your company. And yeah, it's a lot of different categories, but as I said, like it really goes even up until your employees commuting to work or business travels and stuff like that. And on the other end, you go up until the end of life treatment of your products and packaging. Here I added to the scheme the scope 4. We talked already about the fact that you might also have a net positive climate impact. I don't know if you do. You could. So that is to say, if you're coming to the market to replace a more pollutive product or service, then you can have a net positive impact. If you want to be considered as a clean tech, this needs to be the case. This means that you could go to the Article 9 funds, the hardcore impact funds, so to say. That we also have some in the Baltics. In that case, you don't only calculate your own greenhouse gas impact, but you need to show the greenhouse gas impact of the mainstream product or service on the market that you're coming to replace. And that you have smaller emissions, and hence you have a positive impact of replacing the existing product or service. So that's something worth considering. Usually with classical B2C consumer products, you don't have this, but just give it a thought. I wanted to give you a simple example of a company's emissions and how you would calculate it. First step, you really once you have defined the kind of scope of your company and how you're going to be calculating, then we said that you write down all the emission sources, basically electricity, natural gas, car travel by employees, whatever lines you have there where there's emissions coming from, you write them down, and then you start filling in the quantity consumed. So for business travel, it's going to be in kilometers. For natural gas, it's going to be cubic meters. Electricity, kilowatt hours or megawatt hours, however it keeps it a reasonable amount of zeros. And then you multiply it with emission factor, right? You show the calculation and the result. I suggest that as soon as you put down the emission factor, you also note down just next to it the source of the emission factor. And for your own simplicity, also put a source of how you gathered the data and who's responsible for it behind the data of how much electricity did I consume, so that when you backtrack next year, you don't have to invent the system again. Then you can go and improve it if that's possible. And then there's the interpretation of the results. So looking at this company, if those 3 lines would be the whole company emissions, then you see that most emissions come from natural gas. So if you can reduce those emissions, that can create new opportunities, right? We can look at exchanging natural gas with biomethane or something similar. And we see that a lot of emissions come from electricity. Is there any could we make an investment to produce our own electricity? Does it make sense investment-wise as well? Or can we invest into more energy efficient machinery, for example? So questions like that should be raised from this calculation. And there's, as I said, there's supporting tools to do those calculations. I'm gonna show you the Estonian one. Let's first see what's in it. So it's really it's made for Estonian organizations. It doesn't have all of the emission factors integrated into it. It's mainly scope 1 and 2, because those are more country specific usually. So anything energy related. And then scope 3 you can usually find, and they're more specific to your company, right? But they give you like a structure of how to do it. You don't have to follow this structure. Sometimes it can be easier for you to build your own structure, so it's adapted to your company needs. Look at it and consider whether it makes sense for you. But you can use it as an inspiration anyways, and the source of emission factors. It is based on the greenhouse gas protocol, So it's safe to use in that sense. It is free to use. You can download it from the Climate Ministry website. And yeah, as I said, very, very standard approach to it. For Estonian speakers or those who are adept to Google Translate and stuff like that, you can there's a lot of like support manuals and questionnaire templates of like when your employees do the office commuting, then how to gather that info from your employees and so on. So to use those and uh, and every year, so the ministry orders a renewal of those emission factors, so they're updated yearly. And you should every year then download the new version of the emission factors at least. And the second one I told you earlier about, it's the French government agency, ADEME. It's their Environment and Energy Agency. They have their huge greenhouse gas emission factor database. It's called Base Empreinte. So you see the link here. I can share the slides later so you can find it easily. It's you need to create an account. I checked, if you put it into English, then it doesn't let you access to all the data. So stay in French, but activate your Google Translate on the site so that it slowly translates everything that you see. There's very, very specific and so many emission factors. Really do try to find your emissions there. They're pretty well organized under categories, so use it as a source. And the same like the Estonian government tool, they do renew it when needed, and if it's not renewed, it's going to be marked when it was renewed, so you can evaluate whether it's still accurate for your purpose. Yes. Before we move forward, I'm gonna see. I would like to show you. Mm, so on the Estonian Ministry of Climate site, and again, you'll see on my slides the link to get there yourself. But you can take out the model for calculating, or you can take out the emission factors. So the emission factors here, it's really a simple list, as you can see, right? What interests you is the this column, and its unit is here. And here it's under the categories, again, just translated. It's quite easy. You have a lot of energy related emission factors. So, for example, this is how do you call it? Fuels for vehicles. I can choose my fuel. So I'm using diesel for a road vehicle, or yeah, you see it in English as well, HVO and so on. So you can really find the different fuels, the different and the emission factors that are related, and you can see where they took this from. So you see, even here they have used some UK government data as well or Greenhouse Gas Protocol, IPCC, so on. So you can mark down that this is the source of data that you used. And there's quite a lot of this. So do scroll through it and see whether you can find it yours. If not, try the French database, or try your, if you have in Latvia, I think you should have something like that. Then perhaps you can find it easily in your language. Yeah, or else then you need to Google, find research papers, and look a bit more deeply into it yourself to understand whether it's reliable data. Any questions about this? All clear. Okay.
Only remarks. It's complicated.
It is complicated. Honestly, I have been through this process with a lot of startups. You're not startups, but I think it's even more complicated for them because you don't have you can't put one person on this for 3 months.
Yeah. Why would a startup need to go through this as a startup?
There's a lot of government subsidies that are linked to having this evaluation. If you want to be considered by an impact fund, then it is definitely needed. A lot of accelerators demand this as well because they are financed by governments. So it's coming from many places, but I've worked a lot with startups that are even not on the market yet. So the customer side is not yet asking for this because they're not on the market. But the seed, pre-seed financing and accelerators and all those actors, they do ask for it. So they do it. I would say they can use a bit more simplistic methodologies than you can use because you're using, you're calculating your last year's emissions based on your last year's data. So in a way, it's more straightforward. They are going to take a time in the future when they're going to be on the market and effectively have an impact, and then they project based on processes and sourcing that they don't have yet. So it's more hypothetical that they do, and in a way you can simplify it, but in a way, making those hypotheses can be quite a cracker as well. So at least you can use historical data, which is a bit more straightforward, I would say.
Still, I just can't even imagine how we could get all the data from all the suppliers and everything else that is in our supply chain. Not even like calculating for our own, like what we emit, that would be maybe not so difficult, but collecting all this data, that is just a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, you can't always get the precise data from your suppliers. But if you don't, then you can generalize. Generalizations are completely allowed. For example, I'm sourcing some sort of a little electrical thingy that has, tons of different materials in it. It's part of a bigger machine, something, right? Chances are that you won't find the emission factor for this one. Then you go and you find small electric appliances sourced from China, the emission factor for this. And you need to be just transparent about the fact that I don't know the precise emissions from this, but I do know that I use, let's say, 1 kilo of this kind of stuff, right? So it's not an exact science always. You make it as exact as you can, but I would say that it's better to have something rather to seek perfection and not do anything. Especially as an SME, as I said, it's still quite flexible on the methodology side. So just get started, and then you can make it better as you go in time. Yes, and I wanted to talk a little bit also about the reporting and communicating, once the real work, the calculations is done, how to make best use of all of this. So yeah, as I said, be transparent, not perfect. Just share all the assumptions and the methodologies and its limits and the sources and everything. That way, no one can say that you're doing greenwashing and you're not transparent, right? I think that's the biggest risk relating to it. Given that it's very unpleasantly data-driven field, especially for people who don't work with data every day, visuals work magic there. Charts and icons and anything you can visualize, it's way easier to grasp, because I do realize that the horrible Excel spreadsheet I showed you, it doesn't no one wants to look at this, right? So it should be pleasant for your partners to look at as well. And show your reduction actions. Talk about not just totals, but the evolution, what you're doing. Bring that to the picture, and include it in your annual report. Put it on your website, social media. Make it into something that you're proud of. Add it to your tender documents and so on, so it's easy to find. And I think there's no point in not sharing it with people who might want to look at it. So it's always better to have it at hand rather than to go and look for it somewhere in the back corner of your website. Yeah, once you have it, share it. Yep. And this is something, use it for your business growth. We talked about this already. I wanted to bring out some of the kind of real opportunities that can quickly come out of it for you as well, to motivate you a bit, not to abandon this greenhouse gas assessment journey at the moment. As I said, the EU is linking more and more of its financing to the green stuff, and I know that in media it might sound like it's not the case anymore. But behind, when I look at the real measures and the project calls and support mechanisms that come out, it is very much true, and I would say it's increasingly true. Because we're financed ourselves, the association from project-based financing as well. So I look at it quite a lot. And it really does seem to me that it can give you access to good sources of public funding. So on the EU level, there's the LIFE program. So this is real climate and environmental action projects. I don't know if you do any of those. But they so the whole LIFE program, which is an enormous amount of money, they do rely on the EU taxonomy, on the rules that we talked about, and the do no significant harm principles as well. So if you see anything fit there, but I think it's a bit less fit perhaps for companies. It can be useful for more like environmental research that you might source from universities, and then you can link it to a project where you would go together with the university. This kind of stuff I've seen. Horizon is more perhaps more suitable for companies. A lot of innovation and research and development activities directly made for companies, and also a lot of sustainability in it. The current wave of Horizon project calls that I've seen, there's a lot of circular economy, but it comes and goes, the different topics in that. Again, under the new EU 7-year financial framework that is coming out in 2027 and applied from 28. It's gonna take a very strong clean industry approach, definitely. This is what's being shaped at the moment by the Clean Industrial Deal that you have maybe heard about. So if you're producing anything, Horizon is probably going to provide financing for it. So there you're gonna also need to show your climate impact. And Innovation Fund, it's a very good fund. It is financed by the EU emission trading system revenues, but there's very big projects. So there's small and large scale decarbonization projects there. They're all energy industry and transport related, and those projects need to have a positive climate impact. They have this side of they need to be like they need to be quite big. So the small scale, I think it was several tens of millions. So it's for big projects. I know that historically the Baltic companies have not been so successful in getting financing from there, but it's also the fact that we're quite small companies. But if you're looking at a bigger investment, to take a look at the Innovation Fund. And then the national stuff as well. There was the Recovery and Resilience Fund that is being still implemented in all 3 Baltic countries. In each country, they have different measures that come out of it. Again, the public agencies in charge of climate and environment usually are the ones that are giving out this money. So take a look at what they provide, or the innovation agencies as well. Yeah, and then you have the private investment side. What I see in the Baltics at the moment is that banks are starting to have an increasing number of loan types that they give out that are ESG related, with better rates. So that could be a motivator also to look at your greenhouse gas impact. So here I just wanted to, before we wrap up and we have time for more questions, I wanted to just show you in one picture the 5 steps that we talked about. First, you map your emissions, get a clear picture of where you stand, make sure that you can be transparent about it. Then you set the targets of where you want to go. And you start, and in parallel, you map regularly every year your emissions, so that you can see the evolution in time. And then fourth, you communicate your results as well. As we said, transparency is key, and you won't be perfect, but make sure that you're transparent. And the fifth is to look for certification, and that gives you access to more better loans, bigger customers. It's the step beyond that just I'm transparent and I use my methodology towards I'm comparable to other companies of the similar size, and my bigger partners can compare my results, climate results, to those of my competitors. So that's definitely going to open more doors for you as well. And some more resources that I wanted to share here. Take a look at those, can be useful. And info about the taxonomy as well. So yeah, just to use this slide package while you're preparing for your assessment. That is all from my monologue. But I would be very glad to have a discussion about this. Any questions you might have or any feelings you might have. I see from your faces that the feeling is that I don't want to get started on this. But I think it's about like any big task. It's just to cut it into small bits. Perhaps you can also tell me about how it's going to be organized in your organization, how it could be organized in your organization. If you have a person who's kind of who could be in charge of this, whether it's you. Does anyone want to share?
First question a bit different than you want to hear, but from your experience, is it sensible at all to start it on our own account without some supervision or some consultancy from outside?
Yes, is the short answer, but I will explain why. I haven't done it for big companies, but I have talked to a lot of big companies who have done it. And what I hear from them oftentimes is that, in the beginning we wanted to go the easy way, just pay a consultancy to do it, and then start going from there. What they say is that was wasted money, because at the end, no one in our company knew how to use it. It was just a document that was in the drawer, gathering dust. We didn't get any cost reductions from it. We didn't find any new opportunities based on it. It was barely communicated to our partners. It wasn't our document. It wasn't our plan, right? So from this, they say that, yeah, we did this and then we understood that there's no point in this. Either they stop at this point and they're like, yeah, no point, it didn't give me any good results, or they switch strategy and they bring it in-house, and then they make it their own, and they can actually profit from this as well. So it's not just work and like kind of compliance thing.
That I can understand, but like if we would start without any guidance, then I imagine that we would start at the wrong end somewhere and then
Yeah.
just go different directions.
This is what I wanted to say as well. My experience is that it's way better to start with like kind of a one-man consultant that would come and be more inside of your company, and not like not like an outsider who just makes the plan for you, does the calculation and then gives you the report at the end. But they will help your teams to build the process and be more in a coaching approach and technical support approach and methodology bringer, rather than just do it for you. And they're cheaper as well. Sometimes what has happened is that the freelance consultant that was taken for a few months is at the end hired by the company, can go different ways. But there are those people out there. There's quite a lot of experience now already, and usually they're a better fit for SMEs, I would say.
Okay.
And just to say, I'm not, I'm not doing this. So I'm not saying this because I want to sell you anything.
You had a good opportunity.
Yeah, I don't do this. So. Okay, so I see that the thoughts are going towards how to structure it more and get outside help for it. I think with some of you, we do have some like one-on-one coaching this Friday as well, so we can discuss a bit more. Yeah, I can think along with anything that you want to discuss in more detail. Any other thoughts from today? How does it make you feel? Like, what could be a next step? And do you feel like you have also the green light? Could you get the green light from your colleagues or whoever decides at the end in your organization? Perhaps you're the end decider, but in that case, do you think your team will come along with it? Because this is something we cannot do alone, right?
I can comment maybe on that. So my first idea is that we have this ISO 14001 that sets a minimal standard for environmental. And I think my idea is just to build on that somehow to do something extra and to get more understanding what is the main effects. But I do feel that that it's hard to get the data and hard to understand what are the main things to do, because a lot of this seems like a really trivial small things, and I have heard comments from my team, for example, that when we want to, for example, we want to reduce waste, but at the same time we also want to increase quality. So I'm saying my colleagues that we still recycle like all of the cardboard boxes. So if somebody sends us some tooling, we'll send our CNC parts the same old package, but sometimes it gets dirty and not so marketable anymore. So what we're now thinking is putting some sticker on it that just like when the client gets this, he knows that this cardboard box is not so pretty because we reuse it. That's why. Otherwise, we would use a nice new box. But this kind of thing is like, and then we do like this. But another client says that every part needs to be packed separately in like some film, for example. And then we think like, no, what is the point of these few boxes if we can actually, the other client actually requires us to put every part in a plastic bubble, like a lot of material, and we need to somehow follow also our clients' specifications of what they need. Of course, they want minimal package as possible to protect, but usually the minimal is also quite a lot. So these kind of things, I feel that to get people on board, you need to have some data and show them that this is the two things we need to do. Everything else is like not important in a big context, but how to get this out, these few things. So it's hard.
Yeah, I agree. It can help set the cursor, so to say. So because you can't do everything, and any company, even any human being, the moment you wake up in the morning, you have negative environmental impact. You're going to be using your toothbrush that is made from plastic and produced in China, probably, right? So we can't bring it to zero, right? Let's just start from the most easiest things to improve, and then let's keep on moving, and all at the same time. The business view needs to be integrated into all of this. As you said, it's a very good example. I can't send like ugly packaging to my customer. If they want nice packaging, then we need to give them nice packaging. By the way, I've seen some clean tech companies that are producing like reusable packaging for some little electronic stuff that is being sent. I think maybe Telia or someone uses it. It's made out of used textile, and it's made in a way that so no like harmful substances are added, and then it can be used several times, so it doesn't become ugly. So there's starting to be stuff like that because there's people who notice these things inside of companies. Probably it's based on the idea was based on your problem point, right? Pain point. So it's worth taking a look, but as you said, you can't take a look at all of your activities like that. You don't have time and energy to do that. So just focus.
Yeah. Thanks. We can maybe discuss more in detail what we already do and what we should be focusing on the one-on-one.
Is there any more questions, comments, anything? If not, then we can just wrap up. I would just look at my conversation. Doesn't want to open. I see that someone has written something. What year CBAM will be effective? Let me check. I think it's 2026. Not July 2. Because I remember that there's some of you that produce beer, I think, right? So you're probably sourcing some of the things. Transitional phase, definitely. Oh, okay. So so the transitional phase started already in 2023, end of 2023, which means that the importers of aluminium, for example, which is under it, they had to start reporting their emissions already. And getting a certified a confirmation for their greenhouse gas calculations. But then from January 2026, so next January, it will be finally effective, so they need to start paying. So yeah, probably next year you will see the impacts of this. Oh, I cannot hear someone. Thea is trying to ask something. Sorry, let me see if I can do anything. I don't think I have the right to unmute you myself because I see you're on mute. I'm not friends with Teams, so can you say something now? Because I see you're unmuted now. Oh no, still not. But feel free to talk to the Baltic Innovation Agency's team, and I think you can still book like a one-on-one session with me as well if you have any specific questions that we can discuss between us.
Yes, Mart also sent a Calendly link, so there you can book a one-on-one session with Kädi.
Yep. So do let me know. Thank you everyone for being patient on this. I will share my slides through Bia as well. Elizabeth will hopefully help us with it. So there you can see the sources that I shared as well. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kädi.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.